We start episode 7 with a flashback scene taking place in Morning Song, Florida, where we get some much needed context as to the Morning Song subplot and principally Barry Dort's involvement with it. Much of episode 7 is going to be Dort-centric, as a gala that he's alluded to since episode 1 finally makes its presence here, along with Dort's motivations for running this fundraiser. As for the flashback scene, we have Barry Dort greet a bartender at some kind of cocktail bar slash strip club for sirens, at least if these signs on the building are of any indication. Dort recognizes the bartender as one Arnold Hunt, who was a prestigious actor up until he became washed up from a role he took in LA known as Gideon Sterling and humbled himself here at this bar. Because of this setback, this gives Dort a prime opportunity to introduce Hunt to what I will affectionately call a Ponzi scheme by way of wanting to gather up broken or lost outcasts to culturally enrich one another. Arnold immediately suspects this as a cult, which Dort doesn't take too kindly to the use of the C word. In many other contexts, the C word means much more than cult and hell. I've said it enough times to make an Australian blush. To emphasize how sketch this whole arrangement is, Dort says that he prepared his own business plan apropos of even knowing that Arnold Hunt was here at this cocktail bar. Moreover, Dort ensures that any duplicity on this front won't reach back to him, as he proclaims that his ugly face isn't a good selling point of the movement, unlike Arnold's, who seems early convinced by this prospect and hasn't many objections to it. I don't know about you, but if some guy I've never seen was trying to gas me up, then prepares documents to get me roped up into some larger-than-life plan, I'd expect this dude thinks I'm wet around the ears. Arnold asks if this movement of Dort's has a name, to which Dort immediately comes up with the name Morning Song from the coaster he sees, and the two toast in agreement to this arrangement before we segue to the present, with Dort looking at a newspaper article about Gideon Sterling. Dort isn't exactly pleased to see the news of Gideon on the loose and nearing ever closer to Nevermore, although at least his reasons to be as close will make sense in a moment, until Dort douses the flames of the fireplace to use his secret button. Now, what happens next is quite inexplicable both for Dort's reasons to walk around the hollowed halls of his secret contraption, and of Bianca and Gabrielle to not expect this would happen, as the two get caught by Dort in the burned out classroom. When Bianca tries to explain her situation, Dort doesn't need explaining, as not only is he aware of who Gabrielle is, as the flashback also attests to his ownership of her, but of the Morning Song fiasco and how the two crocked up that whole business. Yes, Dort is not in the least way surprised to find Gabrielle hiding out here as though he had known all along, despite his confusion from episode 4, nor did Bianca or Gabrielle expect that Dort may find them within earshot of his fucking office too. Dort didn't just go seek out this classroom because he heard some rummaging either as some kind of excuse. No, I guess he decided to confront these two after seeing the article about Gideon Sterling, despite his qualms about them messing up Morning Song, knowing full well they had squatted here. Also, with Dort knowing about Morning Song and Gabrielle's involvement with it, does contextualize his specific reasons to coerce Bianca in a similar dynamic with her mother and Gideon. Now, the question becomes as to whether he needed Weems to die in order for him to slot himself as principal, because had she not died in the pathetic manner that she does, means that Dort would have had to deal with the saboteurs of the Morning Song scheme a different way. But we can get into Dort's true rationale for planning this gala and fundraiser later. All you need to know now is that Dort is ransoming Gabrielle for Bianca to play ball. We cut to a crime scene of the late Dr. Orloff, where Dort callously disregards his death to Santiago during the usual proceedings as he wants his gala to go unabated. Santiago assumed that he was going to cancel the gala because of this, but Dort tries to speak for Orloff that he'd want the school to keep calm and outcast on. I'm sorry, is this show set in 2023 or 2012? Regardless of that, Santiago says that the press may complicate the matters of the gala, with Dort suggesting that they write off the incident as some kind of tragic accident. Dort? The police can't decide what the press is going to say about this, and more than likely there will be some editorializing about this incident just to get eyes on their story. Santiago has this perplexed look about Dort's suggestion, with Dort emphasizing that the story would look bad on the police, what with their inability to apprehend this zombie. Santiago doesn't like Dort's interfering, so she issues her own personal campus security of police officers against his better judgment. Okay, so Santiago can provide Nevermore with round-the-clock police officers, but can't divvy up her police forces to watch over Nevermore and Pilgrim World back in episode 5? Talk about contrived. Enid and Wednesday oversee this new enforcement by Santiago, with Enid criticizing their ability to stop the Gulpin Gang of all. Yeah, I'm sure they do better than you chuckle fucks could, what with episode 5 and 6 in mind. Speaking of fucking chuckles, Agnes comes into the page to mock Enid for wanting her to stay invisible, as though expecting an apology from Enid. Agnes, you should be the one apologizing to both Enid and Wednesday for wanting to cut off Enid, but I guess Enid can't use that against her. Instead, Enid says that Agnes should be grateful that they even came to save her ass, also a good point, what with Enid's premonition of her dying. Wednesday comes to correct the record that the premonition has changed, getting concerns of Enid about the parameters of the premonition. Wednesday is quite candid to Enid that an Adams family member will die and that she needs to stop the Gulpin Gang before they can be good on that premonition, whether or not she knows they have any involvement on that premonition. Because for all Wednesday knows, the premonition may specify that an Adams family member will die of old age, seeing as it doesn't state how, why, or even when they'll die. Anyhow, Agnes isn't just here to bicker with Enid, as she was good on her word on recovering some details about Isaac through some kind of school records that she gives to Wednesday. This services similar drama to when Tyler gave Wednesday the mugshot of Gomez Adams, and of her confronting them on that in episode 5, as we cut to the cottage where Wednesday confronts Gomez and Morticia about the secrets they've been keeping from her. Wednesday belittles the two that not only did they know about Pugsley Zombie, but that Isaac was a roommate of Gomez. Gomez adds that Isaac wasn't just his roommate, but one of his closest friends, a detail, I remind you, Dr. Orloff did not spout to Wednesday, despite her relationship with Gomez, as well as his description of the relationship between Isaac and Stonehurst. Also, that means that when Gomez told Eugene and Pugsley that the friends you make at Caliban Hall are ride or die, he was a lot more literal than he aimed then. More on Gomez's relationship with Isaac will be shared for episode 8 as additional secrets the two are keeping from Wednesday. The parents are keen to exposit to Wednesday much of what she knows of Isaac and Francois, as Gomez feared that people like Stonehurst wanted to use Isaac's genius for their own plans in mind. Gomez does give himself some credit that he didn't know the zombie that Pugsley was looking for was Isaac until he saw him, which doesn't give him any excuse to let him go, or let Pugsley let him go either, for that matter. As for Morticia and her culpability, Wednesday says to the both of them that
Isaac has fully regenerated, and he's reunited with Francoise and Tyler, who did not leave town as promised.
Before Morticia leaves in a huff. I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is the first time where I'm actually on board with Wednesday being a turbo cunt to her mother. Because yeah, how could she have known that Francois would have been good on her word? Morticia comforts herself by feeding her carnivorous plants before Wednesday badgers her some more. Morticia is aware that she waltzed in the seance chamber as Enid through Weems, as well as of her knowing that Hester gave her the idea to poke into Rotwood's grave. Wednesday says that that idea was enlightening, how from what she saw, before she pulls one of the novels she found in said seance chamber. Did Wednesday pilfer that in Enid's body from episode 6, or somehow snuck in and grabbed it between episodes? Because how would Wednesday have a hold of this book otherwise? As for the novel, Morticia tells Wednesday that she wrote these books under a pseudonym after she got disapproving nods about them from her own mother, such that she keeps this a secret even from her own husband. With how conceited, frail, and reactionary Morticia has been portrayed in Season 2, makes what she said about her thoughts being nothing but radiant in Season 1 just a outright lie, because if she's got this many secrets to keep, this many anxieties and hang-ups about herself, then I don't see what's the meaningful difference between being a dove and being a raven. And the book Revelation seems to be a secondary concern for Wednesday compared to the main one about the premonition, as she's quick to tell Morticia that it has changed and that one of the Adams has to die. Also, Wednesday offers Pugsley as a sacrifice for the premonition, which is not how that fucking works, and I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a joke on Wednesday's part, or that she is 100% serious about committing to the act. And it may in fact be even more foreshadowing regarding episode 8 once we get there. As for what else transpires Nevermore, Bruno frantically makes his approach and plea to Enid regarding the matter of his long-distance relationship with Sophia, as we'll know her as. He makes the argument that he took a break from her when he started to attend Nevermore and complicated the matter when he got infatuated with Enid. Enid doesn't want to compete for his love, to which Bruno retorts that he finally broke things off with Sophia last night. Of course, Enid has good reason not to trust Bruno, what with him keeping this matter a secret all semester, as Bruno desires a consolation prize by way of being a escort, not a date to the gala. Enid isn't sure how to answer before Miss Capri angrily cuts their conversation short again. Miss Capri interrogates Enid as to why she broke out of her looping cages, to which Enid, knowing that it was Wednesday who was in Enid's body, has to play it off as not being herself. Capri emphasizes the dangers of her becoming an alpha with there being a full moon in a few days, and that if Enid does transform, that she may never be able to transform back. Furthermore, alphas who do transform get hunted by other werewolves, which I swear to God was a plot point in the Twilight movies, but maybe it's for the best I don't make that connection. But regardless, all this is fodder for Season 3, so best not concern ourselves with it until Season 3 retcons it. Cutting back to the Gulpin Gang's bungalow, Isaac has all but reformed in body, except for the clockwork heart mechanism that is still completely exposed around him. This will serve as a payoff for his inevitable demise for later, but it's quite fortunate that his regenerative qualities do not extend to anything around his heart. Isaac sees Tyler presumably packing up and asks if he's planning to leave. Unlike Francois, Tyler is more good on their word, as he believes that if he can't be given the pleasure to kill Wednesday, you had more than ample opportunity to, dipshit, that they should skip town quick as they can. Francois says that they got bigger plans for the Addams family as per Isaac's know-how, something Tyler scoffs at given the setback at the Lois lab. Both Tyler and Isaac come to verbal blows as Francois tries to stymie the grudge between them before her coughing fits worsen. They try to hand her medicine, but find that her prescription has run dry, prompting the three of them to go to an animal hospital to find some more. Conveniently enough, they leave just before Wednesday has begun scoping about the Gulpin household for any clues as to their whereabouts. As they do, Weems comes into the fold to pronounce some exposition about her involvement with Francois that will cause damage to the timeline of things, as not only does Weems hold a broken frame of Francois holding a young Tyler, but also that she was asked in this room to be Francois's maid of honor and declined on part of Sheriff Gulpin, not knowing of her being a Hyde. So, not only is Gulpin vindicated yet again for his behavior in Season 1, but that Tyler is now seemingly older than what I had assumed was 15 years, meaning that the postpartum depression excuse in Season 1 can't make any sense as a cover-up story for Francois to be detained at the Lois program. Also, Gulpin fell in love with a person who attended Nevermore, meaning that the inevitable question as to what her powers are would have been stoked. So are we to suppose that Francois lied to Gulpin about her true nature as opposed to lying to him about having powers at all? And if that's true, means that that anecdote Isaac mentioned about a normie kid couldn't have been Gulpin, as if that was Francois's first time turning into a Hyde, means Gulpin would have already been well acquainted with it. Additionally, Tyler has been quite on the fence about accepting Isaac as his uncle, which also means that Tyler would have had to have been born after Isaac died at that experiment, which is plausible given the 15-year gap between them. But did Gulpin know about Isaac? Did Gulpin start to date Francois before or after Isaac died? Did Francois never mention to Gulpin or to her son about her dead brother? Maybe I could buy that it might have been an uncomfortable thing for her to mention, but that detail would rely on Gulpin not knowing anything about her extended family during the time he started dating her, which he dated Francois while she was still attending Nevermore, making the window of time between Isaac attending and dying quite tight for Gulpin to not have known. Anyhow, Thing returns to Wednesday to get her attention to something he's discovered, and in the two find the secret entrance to the bunker of the Gulpin Gang. Not sure if Thing opened the entrance himself, or the Gulpin Gang just left it open in a rush, but regardless, Wednesday has Taser in hand to defend herself, which is a comically rich item for her to expect to work on a fucking nigh invisible zombie and 2 hides. Might as well not have been armed for all that'll help you. Wednesday and Thing don't find much in the bunker, save for the empty prescription bottle, the bloody cloth, and a peculiar moth hovering around the bunker. Wednesday surmises that Isaac is trying to save his sister, who's on borrowed time, but as for the importance of the moth, well, that'll be a job for Eugene to solve. Speaking of, isn't it crazy that Eugene has been more sidelined in Season 2 than he was in Season 1, given he was a literal plot device in Season 1? Like, honestly, if you were to take Eugene out of the equation of Season 2, you wouldn't have to change much around his absence. As for him, he's merely here to exposit to Wednesday the usefulness of these moths, as he was able to pluck some out from Isaac while he was a zombie back in episode 2, as said moths will track Isaac as he's their host body. Confusingly, this is to establish that the Gulpin Gang fled from their bunker as their current hideout, when they only left to go fetch some medicine for Francois, as they'd have no way of knowing that Wednesday found this bunker between the scenes we do get. Otherwise, Wednesday already knows where to look for Isaac absent of these moths. Pugsley is also within earshot to hear that Wednesday found a means to track Isaac, as he's still calling him Slurp, whom tries to lazily justify his reason for reviving Slurp as wanting a friend. Even more dour than that, Wednesday ponders why he couldn't find a living friend, and Pugsley states that no one was interested, before Wednesday shares a glance at Eugene, insinuating heavily that he's at fault for what Pugsley did. No, he fucking isn't, because as I just said, you could cut Eugene out from Season 2 and Pugsley still would have compelled himself to go seek out the Skull Tree, and regardless if Eugene didn't immediately let Pugsley glom on him, doesn't justify Pugsley's actions hereafter, especially in regards to letting Isaac go, knowing full well he's killed several people based on the article that he was reading. Is this show trying to be as morally derelict as Has-Been Hotel is now? Getting back to the morning song routine, Bianca is walking around the halls, noting the presence of Santiago's campus security before Ajax barges in to inform Bianca of Gideon's encroaching presence in Nevermore, along with the sudden absence of Gabrielle. Bianca has to lie to Ajax outside of using her siren song that Gabrielle fled, knowing that Gideon was onto her. As Bianca tries to coax her way out of Ajax prodding, Dort is above the balcony, side-eyeing the two of them from afar. Dort makes his awareness known to Bianca the moment Ajax is more than curious, before Bianca ominously says that he should drop it and that it's better for everyone this way. A few almonds are activating in Ajax's head that something is amiss between Bianca and Dort, which will get him to involve Wednesday into that subplot for later. Aww, how you live for that? Wednesday, to her surprise, discovers Hester has invited herself in her dorm to marvel at her manuscript. Again, Ophelia Hall might as well be the weather vane for how often it has become the public setting piece for our characters. Anyhow, Hester is here at Nevermore on account of Dort groveling for her donation at the gala, and only came to personally reject him just out of the sheer catharsis of doing so. Once more, the importance of Wednesday to take glee at what Hester plans will spell trouble for how the Siren Song compulsion works in a moment. Before Hester leaves, she invites Wednesday to the possibility of staying at her place for the summer to get more engrossed in the family business, although her reasons to bring this upon Wednesday may be more insidious when we get to that Season 3 cliffhanger in Episode 8. We then cut to Hester being given the sales pitch by Dort, who tries to make the matter juicy by proposing a new edifice at Nevermore called Frump Tower, and it took me this long to realize that Hester's last name was an analog to Trump. Now the question is, was this always in the writer's mind as far back as Season 1, or just notice the coincidence now going into Season 2? Oblique political references aside, Hester is somewhat smitten by the gaudy presentation Dort gives her, but is still true to her word about rejecting this proposal and the donation. Dort takes this as the more diplomatic approach to convincing her, as he calls for Bianca, who siren songs her, to give her entire fortune to Nevermore, along with being a personal guest of honor at the gala, somehow also doing so without raising any suspicions to the rest of the Addams family. Of course, Plenty of suspicions will be raised for later, meaning Dort would once again have to force Bianca to siren every Addams family member for this to slide, but we can get to that. We cut to night as we get a very brief glimpse of the weather vane, woohoo! And of the mops who have tracked their scent to Isaac and the Gulpin gang. Tyler knocks hurriedly on a door to an animal vet to convince the employee there to assist him with some kind of dog before Isaac knocks him out and the three break into the place. Paying more of the Addams' culpability in Isaac, it's not nearly enough that they incapacitate this vet as Isaac sees fit to eat him too, making it count number 10 of his kills, all being on the Addams' conscience. As for the procedure, Isaac explains to Tyler that whatever medication Willow Hill gave to Francois had prolonged her life as a result of suppressing her powers, and that her recent transformation to escort Tyler exacerbated that condition, which I suppose is a cover for why Francois wasn't interred in the same manner like her son was, although still incredibly risky nonetheless. Tyler assumes that Isaac is blaming him for his mother dying, to which Isaac blurts the contrary, and that only delaying her treatment will, with said treatment requiring a transfusion of high blood. Tyler does acquiesce to his wishes, although with his jumping to conclusions about Isaac in mind, this will again serve as a plot beat for episode 8. We cut to Nevermore where a bunch of staff, who knows if they're faculty or just gala workers, prepping the gala festivities while Morticia overlooks the whole affair. She gets inundated with Weems yet again without Wednesday present, making what little world-building consistency these psychic powers were established useless. Anyhow, Weems, as per her envy of Morticia, thinks she's going to get overshadowed by her as a result of this gala, with Morticia assuring her that was never her intention. What back and forth they do have is snuffed in favor of Morticia questioning Weems as to why she's here now of all times, to which Weems says that Hester is causing a rift between Wednesday and her, and that Morticia best be quick to tell Wednesday the truth about her relationship with Francois and Isaac, as Morticia's need for secrecy is paramount to this divide. And there will be more secrets about this relationship Morticia doesn't impart that Weems doesn't seem to chide Morticia over until narratively expedient, but we can get to that too when relevant. Regardless, Weems re-emphasizes the point that an Addams will die and that she shouldn't let her need to be closeted undo the family she's tried to protect, as though that wasn't already apparent to Morticia. We cut to the looping cages where Enid has done her best to spruce up the place to make things more palatable for her in the wake of potentially wolfing out for the final time, as Wednesday keeps her up to date as to her investigation regarding the Gulpin gang. Wednesday notices something wrong with Enid, whom the latter spells out to Wednesday that she discovered that she might be an alpha and that if she transforms, she won't be able to transform back and will be hunted by other werewolves as a result. Enid confides in Wednesday that for as much as she's enjoyed having her new wolf pack, that she sees Wednesday just as much a part of her pack as the rest of them. This goes as far as Enid asking if Wednesday would go seek her out if she was to transform, and Wednesday, in her usually macabre but endearing form, says that she has no issue hunting her down, perhaps as a cold comfort to Enid that if she were to be put down, that it was her best friend of all to do so. It is then a bit perplexing that for the last 6 episodes, Wednesday has gone heaven and hell to stop a premonition of her dying, to be so comfortable with killing Enid if it came down to it, but maybe Wednesday is being more than flowery with the language again. We then cut this emotionally strong moment for Ajax to jump in to get Wednesday and Enid caught up in the entire Morning Song subplot through a single image on his phone and several lines of dialogue that do not have the necessary context for Enid or Wednesday to understand the particulars about it, as though the show forgot that the subplot probably should have had more webs to connect it to the main plot. Ajax also suspects Dort is involved in this, giving Wednesday to plot something regarding Dort and Bianca for later. Into the next day, we have Wednesday, in her season 1 attire oddly enough, greet Dort and the Addams to Hester's agreement to Dort's proposal, smelling something suspicious to Wednesday given her prior conversation with Hester before they conversed. Even the rest of the Addams find it peculiar that Hester was so keen on giving all her spoils away to Nevermore on account of her prior actions of having deliberately distanced herself from Gomez and Morticia, with Hester not wanting to argue the formalities of the past. Does the Siren Song compulsion give Hester the means to argue away her motivations like this? Because I imagine her reasons to do this would be confusing even for Hester to rationalize. Hester has additionally made her involvement with Nevermore more formal with Dort, as the two proposed that Nevermore would only allow students with an actual ability to be enrolled there, something I'm surprised wasn't already a stipulation at Nevermore, but that's besides the point. Morticia hilariously brings up that baffling quote she said in episode 1 as some kind of retort, with Hester postulating that it's little more than a platitude.
Base?
I mean, I get this isn't Hester saying this with her chest, but it's still ridiculous that Wednesday somehow was allowed to enroll at Nevermore simply by nepotism, much less without any supernatural powers for that matter. The Addams family are quite unhappy with the news of this arrangement, as we then cut to Bianca doing her personal sparring session. During it, Wednesday chimes in to Bianca's surprise, and the two have an impromptu rematch of their dueling session from episode 1 of season 1. Although Wednesday's reason to spar with Bianca isn't merely to flex her skills, but to interrogate Bianca about her mother, along with getting her family roped up into her schemes in the midst of them fighting. Wednesday eventually catches Bianca in a bind, and she confesses to Wednesday that she hadn't realized that Dort was the one masterminding the Morning Song fiasco, with Gideon merely being the front man, along with telling Wednesday that Dort plans to steal her grandmother's fortune. This is all well and good info to Wednesday until Bianca predictably uses her siren song to erase Wednesday of any details regarding this. So did Wednesday not expect that Bianca would have done this and not had the very many means of which to diffuse her abilities as was previously established? But no need to fear, Agnes was here this entire time, I guess expecting that Bianca would have siren-songed Wednesday so that Agnes could overhear the entire conversation and retell it to Wednesday. You know what would have also worked that didn't require your invisible cohort? A fucking recorder, or a pair of earplugs for that matter, but I guess we gotta force Agnes wherever we can, don't we? Agnes appears to Wednesday, and to her shock, Agnes has taken her fangirling of her to the extreme of trying to imitate the look of Wednesday head to toe. For some reason, this is enough of a reason for Wednesday to take issue with, and not the other examples of intruding on her life, and writes her off as failing to appease her. Also, if this is the first time Wednesday has seen Agnes like this, calls into question how she was able to get her help without prior knowing that Agnes was trying to cosplay as her. Unless I'm to believe that between Wednesday asking Agnes to spy on their fencing duel and now that Agnes chose to do this, this shouldn't be a surprise for Wednesday on top of the other deranged things Agnes has done to gain her approval. We quickly cut back to Jericho, what little we get of it, where Tyler awaits to see his mother recovered, at least for the time being, and likely passed out as a result of the blood transfusion. There is a conversation that Tyler misses between Isaac and his mother that he doesn't impart, and we'll get to know the particulars of it come episode 8, but regardless, the Gulpin gang are now dead set on getting revenge on the Addams family and saving Francois. I guess Francois doesn't pose any objections to this on part of Wednesday saving her from that Lois lab, but maybe her actions in episode 6 are her justification for going through with this. We cut back to Dort's office where he has a surprise for Bianca, and that surprise is of Gideon Sterling, who likely was told by Dort to come here after he had ran off. According to Dort, the entire plan regarding the fundraiser money was a means of which for Dort and Gideon, or Arnold as Dort calls him, to run off from Nevermore to live in isolation somewhere in South America after the gala properly ends. That is, unfortunately, how deep Dort's chicanery belies, and while yes, I did expect an ulterior motive for Dort to commemorate this fundraising gala beyond trying to save Nevermore, I also expected it to be a bit more complex than get a shitload of money and run off with it. This also means that it was largely unnecessary for Dort to sell off Bianca as his student liaison to Morticia, or even have Morticia as the chair of the gala fundraiser if he could have just directly called for Hester to be sirened this way. As for Gideon, he is quite impatient and flustered seeing Bianca as he merely wants the money right now given the circumstances he's in. According to Dort, he wanted Gideon to stay put during the sting operation at Morning Song, and him leaving and giving pursuit to Gabrielle was not part of the plan, causing Dort to improvise. But for my money, given Dort's deceitfulness as of late, he wanted Gideon to stay put so that he could pocket all the money for himself. Emphasizing Dort's two-faced nature, he discredits Gideon's acting prowess contrary to how he glazed them those 15 years ago, and that deal made those 15 years ago are also relitigated here, meaning that it was solely unnecessary for the show to start at the flashback scene if it was going to be redressed this way. Gideon is nevertheless on the offensive to Dort, who tries to douse the situation by having him stay at his apartment with Gabrielle to cool tensions. Gideon crosses a line by iterating that he's only here for the money and that he's done dealing with freaks like Dort, obviously alluding to them being outcasts. Dort decides to do his usual analogy by mentioning why Venetians wore masks as an allusion to them going mask off while wearing them. Dort extends this mask he's wore to Gideon, saying that he's burning it, and incinerates Gideon right down to the bone. Well, so much for Gideon's involvement in the show regarding both seasons, if him being a bigot was enough of a straw to break Dort's resolve this way, and yet another cliffhanger from season 1, cast aside like the bones of Gideon, Dort cast aside in his fireplace. We cut to the gala proper, with the Addams family present sans Wednesday to witness the gaudy and intoxicating display. Dort makes his entrance with Hester on boat, whom the latter loudly proclaims that she is firing the board and introducing corporal punishment, with Morticia rolling her eyes at that statement. I'm sorry, but does Hester have the authority to do that, even with her throwing all her money at Nevermore this way? I thought Bianca only compelled her to be a guest of honor for the gala, not the second in command to Dort? Morticia and Hester bicker a bit as to where Wednesday is before she introduces herself, fairly lapse in any quipping for the rest of the family or even Hester when she wants Wednesday's guidance as to what else to do about Nevermore. Clearly, Wednesday knows that Hester is being compelled by this stage, so she goes to confront Bianca again as to the matter about her mother, something Bianca is surprised by given her successful compulsion of her earlier. Wednesday emphasizes that she needs to trust her if she's going to bring down Dort, to which Bianca says that her mother is in Dort's apartment. Yeah, the use of this word is going to be confusing once we figure out where Gabrielle is. Near the entrance of the quad, Enid is pacing around awaiting Bruno before he makes his appearance, and shortly after, seemingly on cue for this dramatic quibble, Bruno's long-distance affair as well. Enid surmises that she got the red eye from Manila, which is some euphemism for some overnight flight that allowed Sophia to come by at this hour, but the question is, did Sophia do this of her own accord, or did Bruno ask her to despite what he told Enid? Not that it really matters, as this is curtains for Bruno and whatever relationship he tried to build with Enid, who decides to be the bigger woman in this instance and leave for Bruno to fraternize, saying that she has her own path to build. What is that? Two men who she dumped for that same reason? Maybe Enid is better off with women, if Twitter weirdos would have me believe that Wednesday and Enid should be more than friends. Enid decides to sorrow in Dr. Orloff's classroom until she hears Agnes whimper, who also decided to ball here as well, remarking that she can't even get peace in a crime scene. If that is the case, then how was Enid able to come here in the first place? Anyhow, Enid is curious what has Agnes so broken, and Agnes tells Enid that Wednesday wrote her off on her feeble attempt to mimic everything Wednesday, personality, clothing, and all. Enid gives Agnes some insight that one Wednesday Addams is enough for this world. Honestly, too much if you ask me, and that if Agnes doesn't want to be invisible, that she shouldn't hide in the personalities of others. This goes as far as Enid stating that,
"Be your own psycho, Agnes. Trust me, you'll be good at it."
What? I mean, I get the broader point that Enid is trying to say here, but it's a bit disorienting that Enid is telling Agnes to be her own psycho when she's used that as a pejorative to her throughout. Agnes takes solace in this camaraderie that Enid shares and does away with her wig. I honestly thought she just dyed her hair, but whatever, before asking Enid about the dance routine she had planned for the gala. Enid says she's declined to do so after breaking up with Bruno, with Agnes offering to dance with her on account of also spying on her dance rehearsals. And honestly, should I be surprised at this point what her invisibility allows her to do? Also, Agnes being a dance partner for Enid will allot for how Wednesday involves them in undermining Dort for later. We cut to the dinner at the gala, where the patrons seem utterly bored by the dullness on display here, at least exposited by Hester if it wasn't already apparent to the audience. Dort says that there will be a dance routine to spruce things up, some closing remarks from Hester, and then the paperwork to properly submit her livelihood to Dort. One patron is notably left out as we cut to Bugsley seemingly walking out of the gala, downtrodden simply down to missing out on Slurp. Eugene gives him an update as to his lack of whereabouts before asking him why he isn't with the family, to which Pugsley says that they'd likely not even notice that he's gone. Again, this will service most of the drama regarding episode 8 as Isaac, somehow knowing that the gala was taking place today, disguised himself as a gala patron overlooking Pugsley's isolation. Meanwhile, during this, Ajax breaks into Dort's office to find something pertaining to saving Gabrielle from her situation and finds a key in one of the desks to open a door to said apartment. Apparently, this show is using the older English verbiage of apartment as a series of rooms and not a separate building in of itself, which means that Gabrielle could have banged on this door when anyone who isn't Dort or Bianca were present at his office. But I guess it's a good thing the show contrived itself in a different way to make it nigh effortless for Ajax to save Bianca's mother. Enid is psyching herself up for the dance routine before Wednesday rounds the corner to give them an update as to the matter regarding Bianca's mom. Ajax was able to free her. I also assume Wednesday had instructed Ajax to do that, but needs some extra assistance, expecting that Agnes is only a moment away while invisible to be that help. To Wednesday's surprise and commemoration, she sees that Agnes has become her own person and isn't concerned with what Wednesday thinks about her, something I guess Wednesday was trying to drill into her from the moment she became loyal to her. It should also go without saying that there's no reason for Agnes to be invisible here other than for it to be a discovery to Wednesday that she's not pretending to be her, but I guess we needed that character payoff some way. Agnes asks what is the plan, and said plan is not told to the audience, but unlike some of the other scenes which cut away before the conversation, it's not necessary for us to know as we'll discover it during the dance routine. As for the dance routine, it's a duet of Enid and Agnes dancing together to the tune of some more copyrighted music, this being The Dead Dance by Lady Gaga, as I alluded that she would get her tendrils into this show another way. As for the song, it's extremely catchy and actually fits with the tone of the show and of the two dancing, and more than likely that was deliberate as the single for this song released on the same day as the second half of Wednesday's Season 2 released. This may also be a fix for how the music used during the dance sequence of episode 4 of Season 1 didn't really match the frankly improvisational manner that Wednesday danced to it, which is why the TikTok version that accompanied Lady Gaga's Bloody Mary became so trendy back then. Although, I imagine whatever praise I could give for the dancing and the music will once more overshadow any other discussion about Wednesday Season 2, like that TikTok trend did for Wednesday Season 1, as more people will tune into Lady Gaga's music more so than actually bother watch Wednesday Season 2, given you have to wait through nearly 7 hours of TV just to get to this moment. During the dance routine, Agnes takes advantage of her invisibility to make it seem as though Enid is suspended in the air, but more so as the opportunity to have the audience enthralled by Enid's performance as she swipes something from Dort. And as I fucking predicted all the way back in episode 1, Agnes swipes that pocket watch with the Corinthian coral on it from Dort's vest, and is summarily why Dort should have practiced some discretion when telling Bianca why her siren song doesn't work on him. Also, not sure why the pocket watch is still visible when Agnes takes it, when the TNT she had back in episode 4 was invisible along with her, but I guess this was merely done to signal to the audience what she swiped from Dort's vest. After the dance routine ends, the stage is quickly, almost too quickly, changed to the rehearsal as was ordained by Dort. Bianca takes the stage, a bit anxious what with everything riding on her, before she sees Gabrielle, Ajax, and Wednesday with the pocket watch to ease her mind. She uses this as an opportunity to call Dort and Morticia to the stage, although Dort is chiefly of circumstance as she proceeds to remove her damper and compel Dort about how this gala truly came together. Now, every other instance that Bianca had compelled someone, they acted purely as a drone acting on the whim of whatever Bianca said. But with Dort, for some reason, he confesses what he did to Bianca, Gabrielle, and Gideon through gritted teeth, as though knowing he is doing this against his will but can't stop himself from laying out his dirty laundry to the entire audience. This will be important for how Dort tries to get out of the mess Bianca put him through in a moment. As Dort confesses, he's clearly wetting his britches while Wednesday gets that self-righteous indignation she so desperately desired, as he also confesses that he killed Gideon simply because he didn't want to split the money with him. If that was his reason for killing him, then why bring him all the way to Nevermore on the pretense he was going to share the money then? Because Gideon couldn't have known to come to Nevermore unless Dort told him that Gabrielle and Bianca were here? Was it in Dort's mind to kill Gideon at his office as to not leave a trace, but plan to do so after the gala instead of before it? Dort, knowing that he's royally fucked, frantically takes Bianca as his hostage out of here, as I guess Bianca didn't expect him to do that with what little she compelled him to do. But I guess telling the audience that Dort will not bring harm to her or anyone here would be a bit awkward to segue to Dort confessing his sins. The cops rear in with arms ready as Dort tries to make a wedge between the crowd and him by burning a rope holding a chandelier above him. Unfortunately, Dort gets caught off guard by Ajax yelling from behind him, gaining his attention long enough for Ajax to stone him. This in turn causes the chandelier to crash onto the stony Dort, smashing him into several pieces. Given that being turned into stone is temporary, it's going to look real awkward when Dort turns into a fleshy mess for later, but I guess you're probably expecting me to say that Ajax is responsible for Dort's death, right? Wrong, because Ajax didn't cause the chandelier to fall down on Dort, and only wanted to turn him into stone so that he could likely be apprehended for his crimes later. But yes, that is the end of Dort, somehow dying earlier than Weems did in Season 1, and now has started a trend of Nevermore principals biting the bullet in this show. How will the death of this principal fare for the longevity of Nevermore, given the fundraiser was a complete sham? We'll discover that regarding episode 8. Although, now with him gone, one does ponder whether Nevermore actually was in financial debt, or that was Dort's guise in order to justify sending money his way. Hester is positively thrilled by the death of Dort, interesting given her associations with him, as the police and the crowd deal with the aftermath of his death. Bianca thanks Wednesday for getting her out of this pickle, as Wednesday suggests that it is Ajax who she should be thanking, which is oddly humble for a narcissistic little snake like her to say. Hester then approaches Wednesday on the possibility of staying with her this summer before Wednesday properly shoots that down as to her statements about Gomez not being a true outcast, while relaying that Wednesday would technically not be one as a result of her losing her psychic ability. Here's the kicker, Wednesday. I don't think you're an outcast even if you had your psychic ability. As for what Hester said to Gomez, does Wednesday know that was supposedly under the compulsion of the Siren Song, or if that was her true dogshit opinion about him? Because knowing that should change the context of Hester saying it. Regardless, Wednesday uses this as an opportunity for Hester to have Wednesday reconsider her decision if she instead donates to Nevermore in Gomez's honor, to which Hester agrees. She also commemorates Morticia on having made a gala so chaotic in this manner, adding that she's never felt more alive from being nearly conned of her entire fortune before leaving them to their glory. Unsure if Hester knows exactly how she excused her decision before realizing she was duped, but regardless, we have to fast track to the cliffhanger for episode 8. As for it, Wednesday peers over Morticia to see Weems giving a disconcerting glare, something Morticia is also aware of somehow. Morticia assumes Pugsley is in duress with his absence, and if it wasn't already exposited like this, Eugene runs in to warn Wednesday that Isaac is here and at the Nevermore graveyard. So Eugene presumably saw Isaac with Pugsley, seeing as Pugsley is also at this graveyard, and didn't think to warn the cops or the rest of Nevermore and just beelined, pun intended, to Wednesday only? Or if he knew Isaac was at the graveyard, why didn't he warn Pugsley or brought him along either? As for Pugsley, he catches some whimsy with the mops before Isaac introduces himself with his iconic catchphrase to Pugsley, who the latter still refers to him as Slurp. Hey, that's his dead name, or undead name in this case, who asks for his help before getting it forcefully through chloroform. Eugene and Wednesday hurry along in search for Pugsley, but are a moment too late as Pugsley has been kidnapped by Isaac for reasons we can get into regarding episode 8 as this episode properly ends. And that was episode 7, and unlike my feelings about episode 7 of season 1, Episode 7 of Season 2 is the second best episode in this season, which again isn't a high bar to fulfill, and this episode merely gets away with not doing too much with the time that it has for it. Not that it doesn't have its own hijinks and contrivances to fulfill, or the dissatisfying conclusion of the Morning Song arc for that matter, but alas, all the bullshit this show has bottled up will be better saved for the final episode of Wednesday Season 2. Episode 8 is the shortest of all the episodes across Wednesday Season 2, spanning at just 42 minutes. The other 6 are a deluge of credits, so that doesn't count. Whereas the rest of the episodes would usually clock at 45 to 50 minutes plus. The reason I'm putting emphasis on the length of Episode 8 is that it's amazing the sheer density of how much nonsense it is able to pack in just that amount of time, as we'll soon discover. In fact, there is a single frame of this episode that has as many problems, if not more so, than Xavier telling Wednesday that he should have let Rowan kill her, if you can believe that. We start episode 8 with Wednesday giving her usual monologue delivery, pontificating as to why Isaac would kidnap Pugsley if he's trying to save his sister, while a manhunt for Pugsley plays into the foreground similarly to the manhunt presented in episode 2 of season 1. I'm assuming that Wednesday assumes there is an ulterior motive behind kidnapping Pugsley beyond the usual reasons for kidnapping people, that being ransom most of all, but that thought never seems to occur to the rest of the Addams family. Speaking of, Santiago lets Gomez and Morticia know that they've been unsuccessful as to finding their son and wants any info that would attest to the motive behind his kidnapping. For some reason, when Santiago assumes revenge as a motivation, Morticia takes this as Santiago trying to blame them for his kidnapping. In a way, it is your fault, given Isaac's association with Francois, when Santiago merely wants any info she can scrape to help. And the parents are loath to impart any info that would help Santiago, despite what they will tell Wednesday as a through line for Isaac's motivations later, so once more, the Addams family continue their criminal negligence. As some other developments with Pugsley's disappearance and Dort's death, Santiago says that the folks at the gala have left Nevermore and soon all the rest of the students as well, which I guess is a through line to the timetable Weems gave her expulsion to Wednesday back in episode 8 of season 1. It's not definitive whether this means Nevermore will be shut down for good, as it rightfully should have been back in season 1, or just for the time being given the circumstances, but the state of Nevermore will have to be saved for season 3. Back at the Rotwood cottage, Weems, Wednesday, and Morticia convene as to their game plan involving Isaac. Weems suggests that the two convene with their psychic ability, with Wednesday countering that she's currently lost hers. Yeah, not sure why Weems posed that if she already knew, the dumbass. This in turn directs Weems' attention to Morticia, suggesting that she can get the help of Hester with her being a raven for the three to make the trifecta of stuck-up bitches to find the Gulping Gang. As for Hester, presumably she did come by Morticia's summons to assist while pondering like the rest as to why Isaac would capture someone like Pugsley before Wednesday makes the obvious conclusion that it's a ploy of theirs less so than ransom money. Also, why are the Addams family so dismissive as to Pugsley's value as a family member that they find it peculiar anyone would kidnap him? I don't even understand why the show thinks Pugsley is beyond any worth when his greasy little tendrils have laid in place the entire plot since episode 3. Anyhow, the three crones convene at the chamber to converse with their spirits, Hester and Wednesday making light of the situation while Morticia emphasizes the seriousness of it. Shouldn't it be the opposite way around given their mentalities? Whatever. The three eventually get some semblance of a sight along with Wednesday, who is brought back into a vision of the past where the young Gomez and Morticia are burying the dead Isaac in front of the skull tree. Hoo boy! There will be a lot to discuss about this flashback scene and all the problems that come with it, but this is a teaser into the long-winded intro sequence like episode 1 of season 2 had, and what episode 1 and 8 of season 1 had. I can also definitively prove that most of the visuals in this intro have no bearing on the story, starting with... This had only relevance into episode 2 as Agnes never uses his mask again. This was literally just the crystal heart from the duel in episode 3. The cello has no bearing on the plot and is just one of Wednesday's items. No relevance to the plot and is just pure visual. this is the only thing that has some bearing throughout the show regarding Thing. Absolutely no basis in the show at all. Merely an allusion to the Day of the Dead episode. Just the fireplace for the principal's office, nothing more. The skull tree hasn't been visually relevant since episode 1 until now. So, with those visuals in mind, only one has any consistent bearing on the show rather than being a one-off. Anyhow, we cut to episode 8 proper, where Wednesday tells Morticia and Hester that she saw her and Gomez burying Isaac near the skull tree while they were students, getting Morticia visibly flustered that powder keg blew up of all. Wednesday demands some answers from Morticia, whom the latter doesn't impart until Wednesday nearly walks away from the seance chamber. So Morticia gives Wednesday a tale of her and Gomez's exploits at Iago Tower, where Isaac had turned to Gomez for assistance in trying to save his sister from her hide powers, as the machine required a great deal of power. Through this, we discovered that Gomez, in fact, did have outcast powers, as he too had similar electric powers as Pugsley and Fester did, meaning that bullshit line from Morticia back in episode 1, and in episode 7, was merely a deflection and not, as I surmised, some poorly thought out philosophy. Anyhow, Morticia said that Isaac tricked Gomez into taking his seat on the electric chair, as Isaac was willing to kill him to save his sister, such that he had the grave of the skull tree dug out in prep for Gomez. Morticia managed to save Gomez from certain death by sabotaging the lab, and the details of that too will be omitted until relevant, but as a result, Gomez permanently lost his outcast ability. And now with that, let's go over the problems this flashback scene hold. Now, first off, do you remember the Garrett Gates' incident? I certainly did, as the show often reminded the audience that Gomez fending off Garrett happened 32 years ago in 1990, pitting Season 1 on the year of our Lord 2022. What was notable about that incident was that during the entire fight, Gomez did not once use his outcast ability to cast Lightning Bolt on Garrett to fend him off. And maybe you'd claim that, well, perhaps the Gates' incident happened after the Isaac incident. The problem with that, of course, is that Dr. Orloff claims, and Isaac affirms as such, that he died in that lab 30 years ago, and with the events of Season 2 taking place a year after the events of Season 1, although Episode 8 will fuck up that too, means that the Isaac Knight incident has to happen after the Garrett Gates' incident, meaning that Gomez was apparently too gun-shy to defend himself to justify him using his outcast ability. Secondly, in episode 6, Isaac made it patently clear that he needed Dr. Orloff's power core to use the machine at the Lois lab to deprive Francois of her hide ability, as that machine apparently replicated the schematics of the lab at Iago Tower. But now, we are being told that Isaac needed a fresh body with their own conductive powers, meaning that the Lois lab would have also needed that same power source and not the power source Isaac steals from Orloff. Unless I'm to believe that when Isaac made that life support system for Orloff, and after he died, that Stonehurst and Co. only replicated 90% of the machine at Iago Tower, and for some reason included Orloff's power supply in the mix, this does not coincide either way you look at it. Thirdly, Wednesday will ask Morticia why she covered this up, and she asserts that Stonehurst would have had them for murder as the lab built at Iago Tower was a secret. Apparently not the fucking Orloff, who somehow knew and never felt threatened to speak about it, and more to the point, Stonehurst had become a vegetable at some point during his continual means to extract outcast powers, meaning he had no more leverage to pin on the Adams apart from his daughter, who never once brought this up as any leverage to Wednesday either, so there's the likely chance that even Judy didn't know about this arrangement either. Fourthly, this revelation comes as a complete surprise to Hester, meaning that she never once met Gomez at any point prior to him losing his powers, which also means Uncle Fester also didn't find it peculiar that his fucking brother lost his innate abilities in the time that he's been with him, or brought it up to Wednesday as well. That's some on Morticia's part that none of the other extended Addams family members thought it peculiar, as though Gomez apparently having powers was a complete invention of episode 8 of season 2. Lastly, Ajax said in episode 1 that the tale of the skull tree is a Caliban Hall tradition, meaning that Gomez, despite being warned by Stonehurst to keep this a secret, piped up about it enough of it to have some tall tale told as some kind of yearly fling. Maybe you could wring my hand that enough people knew about Isaac and saw the explosion at the tower that rumors started to arise, but if the lab was a fucking secret, then how would the tale corroborate Isaac's involvement with the tower then? Yep, that was a lot to unpackage from that aluminum foil wrapped piece of shit, and there's plenty more motes of shit we've yet to unpack from this flashback scene for later. Morticia, feeling guilty about this, decides that Wednesday should go take Thing with Hester as she feels personally responsible for what has transpired, before Wednesday throws that safety in her face as she's keen to do. Good on Morticia for taking some kind of accountability now knowing why Isaac took Pugsley, even if it contradicts his prior motivations with the Lois lab back in episode 6. We cut today where Enid gets a long look at Bruno as he leaves at the behest of Santiago and is the last time we'll see of him. Speaking of last times, Ajax butts in to say that Enid deserved better before the two repaired their relationship as mutual friends for the time being. Unfortunately, Ajax goes for the simp route by claiming that he harbors no bad feelings towards Enid and that her unofficially breaking up with him had nothing to do with him and that he best move on instead of being angry about it. And just when I thought I was feeling sorry for you, given that Enid had no good reason not to break up with Ajax in any official capacity, and in a way, wanted the same thing that Bruno was trying to have with her and Sophia, if we're being honest here. Still, at the very least, Ajax just wants to be on friendly terms, although I suspect this will become more friendly come Season 3, before he leaves and has left as merely a B-plot footnote for Season 2, like he was Season 1. Agnes pipes in after Ajax leaves to assist Enid in a similar manner to how she assists Wednesday by way of providing her a list of potential boyfriends to seek out. Enid is appreciative, but declines on wanting to take a break from romance, more like taking the path to being a crazy cat lady if you ask me. We cut to the bullpen as the Gulpin gang have chose this place as their new hiding spot with Pugsley bound and gagged. Isaac is a bit perturbed about Pugsley treating him like a pet.
A pet? A pet.
While Francois reminisces about the life she could have had with her husband and child in the photos. Peculiarly, Isaac says that
I never understood your desire for a normie life.
Which, if that is the case, then why is he so doggone to give her that normie life then? Would that not be something he'd raise objections to whether or not she's literally dying from her condition? Regardless, both Isaac and Francois agree that they didn't get the end they deserve and that tonight will change for the better, with the caveat that Isaac promises Francois that he'll do something for her, and what deal that is will be better stated later. Tyler waltzes in as Isaac ruminates on that decision, remarking that he was able to drag off the cops' scent 20 miles from their intended location so that the Gulpin gang can go about their next course of action regarding the Addams family. Tyler questions as to whether Isaac knows they'll even fall for it, something that probably should have been discussed before them doing this, and Isaac retorts that an Addams wouldn't sacrifice one of their own, and that their emotional vulnerability will be their ace in the hole. Depends on what he means by emotional in this case, because Wednesday is prone to sporadic moments of deep emotion at times, and not consistently battered like Morticia is, but I can maybe buy his rationale for going through with his next means. Back, add, nevermore, nevermore, nevermore. Wednesday gives a small update to Enid and Agnes as to Pugsley's condition along with the motives of Isaac, curious as to where he would likely go about saving his sister. Wednesday, shouldn't it be more than obvious that he's going to try Iago Tower again? Seems like the next logical place for a mad scientist to do his experiments like he did those years ago, right? Emphasizing the aforementioned leave of students at Nevermore, Agnes is quick to point out that she's getting collected through her father's assistant before we get a whole lump of exposition and backstory about Agnes thrown heedlessly our way. Sure, this is information that Enid and Wednesday aren't privy to, but given this is the last episode, feels like something that should have been mentioned as early as episode 3 when opportune. Before Agnes says her goodbyes, she lays her fondness for the two of them, describing themselves as the Three Musketeers, more like the Three Cunt-keteers if you ask me, as she leaves to be unable to assist Wednesday with this matter. As for Enid, she has to remain in the looping cages on the off chance she permanently transforms, so she too is unable to assist. We're going to find out just how these two manage to find their way into Wednesday's mess again in a moment. Wednesday, knowing she's lacks in assistance, goes to Eugene to see if he can do his little turn on the moth walk before he tells her that the moths have expired their life cycle to assist. As Wednesday ponders over a menagerie of fireworks and weapons, Eugene pleads to Wednesday that he feels personally responsible for having Pugsley go make friends with a zombie, and that, had he not pushed him away, he might have not been compelled to. Fuck me! Don't give Pugsley an out like this. And while yes, this is Eugene saying this might as well be the writer's barely disguised moralizing over Pugsley's continual abetting of Isaac's actions, when I have already belabored the point that, regardless if Eugene was a part of Wednesday Season 2, that Pugsley would have nevertheless gone to that skull tree anyway. Eugene also can't personally help Wednesday himself, whom the latter already left in a hurry, so we cut to Eugene's shed, who is doing his usual thing before he gets grappled by Isaac of All, who somehow, yet again, snuck his way into Nevermore without any undue alarm. And the only reason for Isaac to be here at this hour is to deliver Eugene something that he'll deliver to Wednesday that should also be clear as day a trap to Wednesday, like that riddle was back in episode 1 of season 2, but we'll get to that matter of that item in a moment. At the principal's office, Santiago informs Wednesday that she's diverting all attention to Burlington based on the false mark that Tyler left, while Wednesday scoffs that it's very likely a ploy to drive off their scent. I mean, regardless if it is a ploy, this is the only thing the cops have to work on, and not to mention, Pugsley's clothes will nevertheless have some amount of evidence on it to point them the correct way. As Santiago leaves, Weems chimes in to give her holier-than-thou proclamation about Dort's death, saying that as a result of it, that her legacy has been rekindled before Wednesday reminds her of her actions back in Season 1. Meaning that Wednesday had no reason to speak on behalf of Weems' defense to Dort if she knew that then. Whatever. Weems isn't particularly helpful or useful dead, alive, or a fucking spirit guy for that matter. Eugene storms in on the office to relay to Wednesday the object Isaac gave to him, while accentuating that if Eugene told anyone else about this, that Isaac would come for him. How could Isaac be good on his word? And if Santiago literally crossed paths with Eugene between scenes here, then wouldn't it behoove him to tell Santiago whether or not he knows Isaac is good on his word? More importantly, this also hinges on Isaac somehow leaving in quick enough fashion for Eugene not to direct attention to him, and that Wednesday wouldn't fib to the cops about this so as to keep their attention solely on Jericho. It feels utterly contrived to allow the police to redirect their attention away from Jericho and little more. The object that Wednesday was given by Isaac, lucky that it wasn't a fucking bomb or something, is some kind of snow globe with the skull tree with the word midnight scrawled on the bottom of it. Not to be a pedant about this as well, but wouldn't the existence of a snow globe of this skull tree imply that it is more real than fiction to the townsfolk of Jericho? I don't buy that the Gulpin gang were able to just craft this snow globe in due time, so they must have bought this, or stole it, at some souvenir store, meaning that this skull tree shouldn't be some fable that Pugsley had to extensively map out its location for then. Also in regards to this object, again, Wednesday has no reason to believe that Isaac will arrive at the skull tree and at midnight, and if she believes that the Gulpin gang have subverted the cops as she exposited, would have good reason to believe that this too is a diversion. But nope, she will go out to this skull tree with Thing, the importance of him being here is more significant than you could ever realize, to lay her own trap on him. Once at the skull tree, Wednesday says this awfully ironic line given he was able to lure Wednesday to where he wants her, as she sets up some kind of crossbow emplacement for Thing to shoot at Isaac when the time is right. I don't know how Wednesday expects this would somehow kill him when she literally put a sword through his head and it did little in the way to stop him. And don't expect me to understand how Thing can see through the scope of the crossbow to even properly aim, for that matter. Anyhow, Isaac does make his appearance with the bound Pugsley as his leverage, while Wednesday gives her veiled threats plus filibuster to Isaac to give Thing enough time to ready the shot. Something that is notable through the back and forth is that Wednesday says that even with Isaac having Pugsley, that it would take months for him to rebuild Iago Tower, time that he doesn't have to save his sister. Yeah, that detail will be largely ignored, and the show's way of rectifying that time frame is also silly for later. Thing fires a crossbow bolt, and Isaac manages to catch the bolt into his right hand. And why is this detail important? Well, Isaac expected that Wednesday wanted to run her mouth as a distraction and had Tyler lying out in wait to capture Thing, and through Isaac, we discover that Thing was the missing right hand of his all this time. There's much to deliberate on the utter silliness of this, but Isaac has some more exposition to utter before we can. Isaac says that he realized that his missing right hand was around when at Willow Hill, which convinced him to capture it, as apparently the means to use telepathy are specifically ordained through the right hand. During that incident at Iago Tower, Morticia cut his right hand in the middle of his experiment, and that, as a result of the explosion, caused his right hand to be animated separate from his own body. And now with that, let's rant. So first off, what the fuck was Isaac's right hand before he nabbed Thing? Because even during the flashback scene where Morticia and Gomez were burying Isaac, he still has both of his hands in those gloves as they bury him. When he pulls the glove off with that bolt, nothing but soup comes out the other end. So was it a prosthetic or also a rotting amalgam of his glove? Because that's awfully convenient that during his regeneration that he somehow wasn't able to reconstruct his right hand, but can apparently reconstruct an entirely new brain in his skull. Secondly, Wednesday comes to this realization by literally visualizing Isaac's last name as an anagram for Thing. So the question now becomes, if Morticia and Gomez chose to keep Thing as a pet, why in the ever-living fuck would they chose to name him after an anagram of someone who tried to kill them? I just assumed Thing was named Thing because, well, look at him, and not as an allusion to his past. Thirdly, with Isaac saying that he saw Thing at Willow Hill with this scene, he somehow had enough spatial awareness in his state to remember this detail and conclude that it was his missing right hand. Speaking of right hand, the detail that Da Vinci's need their right hand is slightly contradicted with Rowan, who also had telepathy, conjuring that book with his left hand in Season 1. Although, with that, there are more instances of Rowan using telepathy with his right hand than his left, which you can chalk that up to Season 1 believing that you can use telepathy with either hand if you have it. So it is nevertheless a contradiction from what Season 2 establishes. Fourthly, establishing that Thing became its own entity through this freak experiment implies that the other body parts at that seminar in episode 6 also came to from something similar. Meaning that there too is a full person missing eyes, an ear, or a whole leg wanting to be made complete because they too had gone through specifically what Isaac went through. And finally, how did Isaac expect that Wednesday would bring Thing along, whether or not Tyler likely told him how closely associated they are to go about this? Because often Wednesday has not had Thing along, especially in Season 2 with how much Agnes takes his place, more on her as well, and this also relies on the agreement the two made with each other all the way back in episode 1 of Season 1, something Isaac nor Tyler would be privy to. And unfortunately, even that will not square away all the other nonsense that follows with it, as Isaac makes himself complete by propping Thing onto his stubby wrist and somehow telepathically stitching him together. So the show already contradicts its own established rules by allowing him to do this absent of him having his right hand in the moment, unless we are to believe that the moment Thing makes contact with his stubby wrist that Isaac now has autonomy over him. And speaking of, how? Wouldn't Thing just be wriggling around on his right arm the entire time as a captive like Pugsley is? But alas, Thing is now acting on the whim of Isaac, who makes his Da Vinci prowess known to Wednesday by telepathically throwing her into the Skull Tree grave and proceeds to bury her alive with his telepathy. I mean, sure, there's hardly a chance that Wednesday will survive this, but if his telepathy can conceivably bend her in this manner, can he have her die from a rare case of bonitis? Tyler is even spooked by what Isaac did before they get back to the matter at hand regarding Iago Tower. So I'm sure you're probably wondering how Wednesday will get out of this and stop their fiendish scheme. Agnes. What does that spell? Fucking Agnes, of course, who was here the entire time, yet again, for the sake of the plot. And you may think I'm being unfair to the show that someone who is invisible can show up wherever they want, but the reason it makes no sense for Agnes to be here is that A, her being here requires she knew that Wednesday would go to the Skull Tree at midnight, and B, require that Agnes did not leave, as she stated to both Wednesday and Enid. Francois was waiting in some cemetery for Isaac and Tyler to return to give her the good news that he got his telepathic hand back before they enter into one of the many contrived secret tunnels invented for Season 2. Meanwhile, Enid gets roped into this plot by way of Agnes asking for her assistance in digging Wednesday out of her grave, saying that she couldn't leave Wednesday and fled the moment her assistant stopped for gas, compounding the ridiculousness of her somehow knowing to go to the Skull Tree at that time. She's also lax on the details regarding Thing to Enid, which perhaps is for the best as Wednesday is most concerning at the moment. Shack at the Bull Tree, Agnes and Enid try to dig Wednesday out, but in their current forms is not going to be enough to dig her out in time. Enid decides to make the sacrifice for Wednesday by transforming again to have the means to save Wednesday from her predicament. They succeed, and as Wednesday wakes up, she's surprised to see Enid transformed, with Agnes saying that she did so in order to save Wednesday. Knowing that Enid likely will be haunted down, takes her opportunity and runs for it, and is the last we'll see of Enid going into Season 2. The circumstance of her condition will only be relayed into the projected Season 3, but as for this, I do find it touching that Enid, knowing full well the implications of her action, does something humbling for Wednesday, given her attitude to Wednesday throughout Season 2 has been quite uncouth from Season 1. Wednesday has Agnes go track Enid as Morticia and Gomez, somehow knowing she would scope out the Skull Tree, happen to barge in the moment Agnes gives chase to Enid. Although, with Weems also being here, there's an implication that she told Morticia that she was buried here, and not that she was going to confront Isaac with Pugsley, the heartless hag. Back at the now abandoned Nevermore, also convenient for the Gulpin gang, the gang arrive at Iago Tower. Tyler asks how they expect to put this lab back together, with Isaac playfully remarking that he is going to put it back together and utilizes his telepathy to move around a bunch of consoles and lab doohickeys. Okay, so this tower that was presumably closed off those 30 years still has all the lab equipment just stored here and is merely covered with some dust? And more importantly, sure, telepathy can make moving the equipment easier, but actually getting it to work, given that it was an explosion that destroyed the lab, is another huge stretch that the show does not earn, as though to insinuate that Tyler merely needed his right hand to get this to work. Okay then explain to me how, despite being made aware of Thing back in episode 4, that Isaac did not go looking for him when they went to that Lois lab in episode 6 perchance. Wow, it's almost like Isaac needing his hand for telepathy was merely an invention for episode 8, with no consideration for his actions in the prior episodes. Gomez, Morticia, and Wednesday are hurrying their way to Iago Tower, with Wednesday confronting her parents as to why they never told Thing about his past. Their claim is that it was a secret better left buried, and that they didn't want to burn Thing with that, suggesting that any good in Isaac transferred onto him. And they also didn't want to burden Thing with that signet ring of his, as well as to his only clue that he's a part of Isaac, right? Which means that every death by Isaac's hands, well, mouth, are on them, as opposed to only Pugsley being guilty of them all. And am I to believe that Gomez posed no questions as to where Pugsley got this zombie between episode 3 and 5 to make this make sense, and that Gomez didn't pose any concern about Thing after realizing that Isaac was alive? Morticia and Wednesday go pursue the Gulpin gang, while Gomez has to hang back to get word in on the sheriff, something that Wednesday could have done the moment she was made aware of Isaac being around Nevermore, no less, but anything for that dramatic tension, right? Anyhow, Isaac puts the final touches on the lab, although the amount he had to do seemed physically taxing for him. This will not factor into anything else regarding episode 8, so not sure why there was even a point to address this state. Tyler slinks Pugsley into the power source while Francois stands idly by, awaiting for Isaac to do as was promised to her. And what was promised is that Tyler would be the one to have his hide powers extracted instead of Francois, as Isaac forcibly telepaths him to the operating table. And yes, Tyler is helpless to stop this despite having hide powers, although maybe this is in line with the show's previous concessions to him being restrained to transform and or likely had difficulty using them with Francois being his master. As for the promise itself, was this a conversation they had after the events of episode 6? Because I'm not sure where it got in Francois' head to have Tyler be relinquished of his powers instead of her between then and now. Did she do it because of Tyler attempting to turn into the Hide during that experiment in episode 6? Anyhow, Francois tells Tyler that it's already too late for her to be saved, meaning that previously established timetable was also useless. As to her reasons for Tyler to be the subject of the experiment, adding that it's his time to be freed of this curse. Tyler is very adamant to say that it's not her right to take these away from him, and is something to keep in mind given the show's continual allotting of his actions from season 1. Morticia and Wednesday make it to the hatch of Viego Tower as Tyler continues to plead to his mom to be freed. Wednesday grabbing an axe that I can only assume was left over from that prank Agnes did back in episode 2, what with there being several blades around as well that Morticia grabs for. As the experiment is ongoing against two unwilling subjects, Francois is able to spot Morticia and alerts Isaac, who the two just pace about in looking for them with seemingly no spatial awareness anywhere else. Wednesday manages to sneak up to the operating table to Tyler, who literally pleads her to kill him, as though he'd rather die than live without being a Hide. And once more, Wednesday has every good reason to kill him outside of her own, and what does she do? She breaks one of his binds, which somehow allows him to transform, and also seemingly stop the electricity from surging into him the moment she does this. Am I to take it that Wednesday is taking pity on him, or is it really that she's grown fond of him because holy shit, it wouldn't be a high school drama show without that, now would it? Just bear in mind that Wednesday has no reason to believe at the moment she frees Tyler that he wouldn't take every opportunity he can to kill her along with Isaac and Francois, even with how incompetent he has been to kill her, nor does she know the circumstances as to why Tyler was on the operating table, so needless to say, her priorities are beyond fucked. As Tyler transforms, Wednesday does effortlessly free Pugsley from his confines. Yeah, I buy the believability that she didn't get electrocuted here, show. Before Tyler does the usual trope of throwing someone across instead of just ripping someone apart, as he does to Isaac, and as he does intend to do to Francois. Wednesday, for some reason, takes this as an opportunity to spectate this conflict between them, instead of just running away like she did back in episode 6. Again, where the fuck are your priorities? Tyler once more decides instead of just mauling his mother to throw her across, giving her ample time to transform herself as we get some hide-on-hide action. This inadvertently causes destruction to the lab, along with Wednesday doing her own to the console as Morticia helps Pugsley along. Isaac awakes from being thrown across to the witness of the Hides fighting on the Ophelia Hall balcony, realizing that things are getting incredibly out of hand for him as he desperately tries to unfuck the situation at the lab. During this, Wednesday does take notice of Isaac, and while Morticia escorts Pugsley to the hatch with Gomez, approaches Isaac with the intention to use the axe to rescue Thane from his confines. Wednesday, how the fuck do you think this will fare for you given Isaac has telepathy? Am I seriously to believe that, like with Crackstone, that he won't use his telepathy when convenient to her? But before the two can tussle, the lab properly explodes again, which also causes the two Hides to be thrown off from the top roof of Nevermore. Tyler manages to hold onto something, but Francois is losing her grip, and in a moment of humanity for a Hide, Tyler does attempt to reach out for her. Francois, supposedly knowing it's too late for her, decides to let go and plummets to the werewolf statue in the quad, killing her somehow? Like, she doesn't even get impaled by anything. She literally just gets held up by the statue as though it's holding her, and given that their fight scene implies that fall damage doesn't work the same way transformed, would this actually be fatal? And alas, that is the end of Francois, and effectively the end of the Gulpin Gang, a bit of poetic irony that Tyler had inadvertently caused her death after years of believing she was already dead, to the witness of Santiago and her troops who have just arrived at Nevermore. Iak at Bago Tower. Pugsley and Wednesday awake from the calamity of the explosion, and as for Morticia, it seems her situation is dire, what there being some giant coil crashed on top of her. Gomez, being spared of being knocked out, hurries them to move the giant obstacle out, assuming the worst that Morticia was the one the premonition ordained. Psych! Turns out she's just a bit gassed out from the whole ordeal, and at this point, what was the circumstances that Wednesday needed to do to ensure the premonition wouldn't happen? But maybe I'm biting my tongue here, as Isaac also returns to telepath Wednesday to him, must be familiar territory for Wednesday given Rowan, and force chokes her to the witness of the Addams family. He claims that he's doing this because he lost the only person he ever truly loved, and wants them to feel the same pain he's going through. So, he somehow knew that Francois died between the explosion and him awakening from it, and if that is the case, then why did he go through with her promise knowing that she was going to succumb to her hide condition then? So, how will the Addams family save Wednesday from certain death? Well, Gomez and Morticia tried to plead to Thing to snap out of what I can only assume is compulsion through nerve endings of Isaac. This initially doesn't work, and Morticia takes notice of the axe Wednesday dropped, and manages to kick it towards her, giving Wednesday an opportunity to throw it at Isaac. She misses, although does free herself from his choking for the moment, and somehow that move does indeed compel Thing to fight back against Isaac. Again, I don't understand the mechanics of why Thing ever was under his beck and call in the first place, as Thing does predictably wriggle around on his arm like I expected he should have from the very start. Are we to assume the writers think that if you merely stitch your hand back to you, that you also have recovered all muscle, joint, and nerve movements in that hand too? And the remaining procession of this fight is basically Isaac playing a game of stop hitting yourself, before we finally demonstrate what can actually kill Isaac, given the show has yet to establish that. Thing opens up Isaac's vest to reveal his clockwork heart and proceeds to pull it out. Reminds me of one of the endings to Liza P, ironically enough. And yes, that is the final death of Isaac, a bit ironic that the only one who actually did him in was technically a part of himself, and that part of himself did not indirectly cause his murderous rampage for that matter. As for this being the means of which to kill him, was that information Morticia and Gomez weren't privy to when they buried him? Gomez said that he was one of Isaac's best friends, and somehow did not know that the clockwork heart was keeping him alive? Maybe he assumed it wouldn't keep him alive past being a corpse, and speaking of that, what the fuck was even the mechanics of that, for that matter? Like, the show expects me to take it at face value that Pugsley merely needed to jolt him back to life, and then proceed to eat people like Imhotep to get back his body in whole, and the only thing that could stop him was not having a heart? Anyhow, Thing does come to, what with him being a part that's greater than the whole, as Orloff so put it, and severs himself from the stitching to embrace the Addams family. Night turns back to day as Wednesday and Thing are packing up to leave Nevermore, a bit curious that they are allowed to leave this late and without any further questions from police, before Wednesday asks Thing how he feels about having been a part of Isaac and what he'll do with that knowledge going forward. Thing seems fairly indifferent to it, such that he ditches away the signet ring, posing a symbolic analogy of him not defining himself by his past, however you want to square that away. Agnes also returns to Wednesday to give her any info about the whereabouts of Enid, finding some kind of wilderness cam shot of her and that she's presumably heading towards Canada for the time being. Wednesday does ask if Capri is of any help, and Agnes says that she's MIA, and boy, her culpability into the actions of a criminal will also be thusly addressed in a moment. Agnes alludes that Capri likely is looking for a new job as to Nevermore being Nevermore, which again isn't definitive confirmation that Nevermore as a school is being shut down, but if it is, Thank God it was, because no way this school should have functioned past the first few years of its opening. And now we get the single image that I alluded to that has so many problems with it that it astounds me that they even shot it, and it's merely of Tyler standing in front of a headstone with both of his parents on it. Let's go over why this is so bad. First off, Tyler is a fucking criminal that literally had a search out for him as far back as episode 5, who is somehow allowed to just post here casually to see the headstones. And maybe you assume the cemetery is way off town, but nope, it's right in the heart of Jericho, and no one bats an eye. Secondly, take a closer look at the dates on these headstones. Do you see the problem yet? Well, starting with Francois, her date of death was 2010, which is likely alluding to the fake death Judy or Augustus signed for her, which is an issue in of itself if Wednesday didn't have an obituary for her. But Santiago said that Francois had been dead for 15 years, meaning that the events of Season 2 take place in 2025, if this headstone is to be believed. This cannot work in the slightest because A, Enid tells Wednesday she missed school prank day last year from the events of Season 1, which takes place in 2022, and B, the Garrett Gates' incident happened in 1990, which Wednesday purports took place 32 years ago. Unless Enid is somehow stupid enough not to distinguish last year from a few years ago, which also means Wednesday must be as well, this does not coincide and feels put there merely for the sake of the show to take place in the same year this season aired. But let's humor for a moment that Season 1 somehow takes place in 2024 instead of 2022 for this to make sense. Starting off, if that is the case, then the show writers are deliberately confusing their audience as to the time frame of things when it suits them, as there is nothing in Season 1 to suggest that the show takes place in the future of the current year it took place. Secondly, that still means that the Garrett Gates incident happens before the Isaac Knight incident, even with Wednesday supposedly being wrong about how long ago it occurred, pinging Gomez's lack of using his outcast powers there. Thirdly, that means that Tyler went about his actions at the age of fucking 12 in Season 1, although his actual age is still a mystery regarding Season 2, and I don't think this nearly 6 foot tall behemoth strikes me as a 12-year-old unless Tyler is also suffering from gigantism. Thirdly, Sheriff Galpin's headstone also confirms as such that the show believes it takes place in the year 2025, which again is incongruent with everything else that I established, and additionally we get the date of September 25th as the day he was presumed dead. Assuming that this day rolled over into the night that Wednesday discovered him and not the day after, means that Nevermore started school somewhere between September 22nd or September 23rd, what with the day and night cycles between episode 1 and 2, which is unusually late for a school to start, and it starting this late would be the only way it would make sense that Day of the Dead occurs a month after the school starts as purported in episode 5. If the show can't even get its own timeline coherent, how do you expect the plot will be? Anyhow, back to the last legs of episode 8, as Tyler is jumped by Miss Capri, who is not in the slightest deterred by seeing him if she knew about those events in episode 8 of season 1. She's here to offer some kind of support system to Tyler, as though he fucking deserves one, whom the latter is not enthused about being corralled by mother or master. Miss Capri attempts to make the prospect tantalizing by saying that Tyler could be a part of a pack that would be rid of the need for a master, and her reasons to help Tyler are purely that her father was also a Hyde. So, bear with me. If this was something that could be done from the start, why was that not information Dr. Faulkner knew? Curious how Miss Capri is somehow even more knowledgeable about Hydes than he was, and that, conveniently enough, she's been round the block with Hydes personally for this to occur. But whatever antics Miss Capri and Tyler get up will be spelt for Season 3, but needless to say, she is outright abetting a career criminal who has killed 10 people, 11 if we count Francois, but that's a bit more vague, and perhaps there are some morally questionable people listening to this saying, well, Tyler was coerced into killing those people, he never had the free will to do that. Keep in mind, Tyler said to Wednesday that he took pleasure in seeing the fear in his victims' eyes as he killed them. He doesn't view being a Hyde as a curse to Isaac, and that he wanted Wednesday to kill him, knowing that he likely would lose his Hyde powers. Eric Harris wasn't a psycho because he played Doom or listened to Nine Inch Nails. He was a psycho from the start. So yes, Tyler doesn't need therapy, he needs a fucking jail cell. Rounding out the remainder of arcs in episode 8, Pugsley is packing up his things before he gets a complimentary snack from Eugene. This in turn has Eugene invite Pugsley to his house because that's what friends do, I suppose, as a way for Eugene to rectify the mistake of him not being friends with Pugsley. The more you tell me it's Eugene's fault, show, the less I believe you, and the more I believe you are morally fucked in the head to try to convince anyone that. Morticia is out clearing out the Rotwood cottage before she gives Wednesday a gift by way of Aunt Ophelia's journal, surmising that it was unwise for Morticia to keep secrets from her this whole time. Yeah, and I'm sure come season 3 there's going to be more secrets where they come from. Perhaps they'll reveal that Uncle Fester is actually Jewish. As for Weems, she chimes in to state that having restored their familial bond was only the first step into regaining her psychic ability, however inconsistent her having those powers have been, before she properly adios out of the cottage. I guess spirit guides can take a break from being a spirit guide? What the hell does Weems plan to do outside of it? Unless this is to establish that Wednesday also lost Weems as a spirit guide after restoring that bond? Anyhow, Gomez runs in to have the Adams leave, but Wednesday says that she has other plans in mind. And that plan involves taking a ride with Uncle Fester to go search for Enid out north. And the Adams family are just okay with this? I guess they were okay with her taking a flight out to Missouri, so I guess this too shall slide. And what little remains of episode 8 is the typical monologue with an orchestral cover of Sweet Dreams by Eurythmics, and I don't even get the through line of using this song as a cover to bookend season 2, but regardless, there is more to opine on the few lines of dialogue expressed. Firstly, Wednesday ponders as to why she decided to free Tyler instead of kill him. Yeah, we're all wondering that, writers, while still having distrust over the whole of the Addams family. So, better get prepared for season 3 to be more of the same, motherfucker! Lastly, Wednesday goes over Aunt Ophelia's book and inextricably does get her first psychic vision since episode 1 of season 2 of what Wednesday assumes is Aunt Ophelia still alive all this time. As I stated, can't anyone actually die in this show unless it's visually shown that they died? But emphasizing Aunt Ophelia's survivability, the final cliffhanger that season 2 shakes at us is that we see Hester go into her personal dungeon to open a cell with Ophelia in it, calling to her with a bloody scribble of "Wednesday must die," Ace Ventura anyone, plastered across her cell. As I stated back in episode 6, that line by Hester had more subtext than you'd realize, and now we have to speculate as to whether Hester's reasons to invite Wednesday to her home were more insidious than what was previously expressed. Although, given my last attempt to speculate as to cliffhangers onto the tail end of season 1, I'm not going to do that for season 2 as the actual reasons may be even more retarded than what I would give the show credit for. And that is it for episode 8, and by extension, Wednesday season 2. And like with episode 8 of season 1, is the second worst episode in season 2, mainly as a result of all the secrets it unburied with the finesse of a Jackson Pollock painting, having bottled all of its plot beats into an incoherent mess, the continual moral gaslighting the show puts on the audience, and of course, the literal timeline breaks from that single frame of episode 8. But perhaps I should save my summary of Wednesday season 2 for, well, the summary. And that, woes and wonettes, is the entirety of Wednesday Season 2, front to back. Heralding much of the faults of Wednesday Season 1 has added a schizophrenic manner of pacing, an overbearance on juggling too many plot beats such that they fall to the wayside, mired by the lack of acknowledgement of the abhorrent actions of our protagonist, to abet the antagonists their continual means to advance the plot. But when it comes to any discussion about a TV show between seasons, the only thing you're curious about is whether Wednesday Season 2 is better than Wednesday Season 1. The short answer is yes, and the long answer is that it is only marginal while adding its own baggage separate from Wednesday Season 1. When Wednesday Season 1 wasn't being nonsensical and insufferable, was aggressively boring, dull, and dour at times, as though the notion of having a gothic aesthetic requires no liveliness in the show, despite what the Addams Family movies would attest to that. At the very least, Wednesday Season 2 does include the entire Addams Family in motion, and it trying to juggle multiple plot beats does arouse further interest beyond a linear interest in Wednesday as a character. Speaking of, while Wednesday is still a shitheel and hasn't budged an inch between seasons, I've drawn less ire towards her throughout my analysis of Season 2. Why? Well, it's not so much that Wednesday herself has dialed down, but that other characters have dialed up that behavior in turn. Notably Enid, who seems just as conceited, envious, holier-than-thou, and frankly inconsistent with her standards in comparison to Season 1. Which I'm unsure as to whether the writers wanted her that way to wedge drama between her and Wednesday, or that Wednesday rubbed off on her in the worst kind of ways. But even foregoing Enid, Morticia is equally as infuriating going into Season 2, and Agnes is cunningly nefarious as well for how much the show wants to establish this friendship triangle between them. And I can only assume that with Wednesday having less screen presence, that someone else had to compensate for the lack of that extremely unlikable characteristic. Wednesday Season 2 feels frankly all over the place across the board in terms of its plot, story, characters, and mystery construction. Season 2 advertised Enid's premonition throughout the teaser trailer, but its relevance dies the moment episode 6 ends in favor of a new premonition. The avian mystery only extends for 4 episodes. The morning song subplot from Season 1 is only traipsed in episode 3, 4, and 7 chiefly, and abruptly ends in episode 7. The drama between Enid, Ajax, and Bruno is barely touched upon as well. I can continue to go on how other subplots end as soon as they start, but you can objectively see this from the choice of directors for the episodes. Tim Burton directed episode 1, 4, 7, and 8, and then 2 different directors did episode 2 and 3, and episode 5 and 6 respectively. Whereas with Season 1, Tim Burton at the very least directed the first half of that season, and then a different director took the helm for the latter half. This incoherence extends to the overall world building of Wednesday Season 2, as Jericho has taken a considerable backseat to the overall setting of the show compared to Season 1. There are only minute glimpses of tangibility in regards to the other locales we go to, but as for where the inn at Apple Hollow is relative to anywhere else, or the Gulpin House for that matter, your guess is as good as mine. Even Nevermore suffers in that department with the new development of Iago Tower and the litany of secret tunnels and passageways that comprise it, making the Overlook Hotel in The Shiny seem coherent by comparison. You can see this with how much of the public school activity takes place at the Link instead of the Quad in Season 2, when the Link in Season 1 was supposed to be the driveway entrance into Nevermore. This may also be as a result of all the characters that Season 2 had to juggle in the interim, even if some of these characters don't get a lot of screen time between them. The characters we do lose from Season 1, that being Xavier, Sheriff Gulpin, Lucas, and Laurel Gates, which I didn't even expect her to be in Season 2, we gain with Agnes, Bruno, Dr. Orloff, Dr. Fairburn, Miss Capri, Pugsley, Hester, Isaac, Francois, Principal Dort, Augustus, and Judy Stonehurst. And all of them are going to be rubbing shoulders to fight for whatever screen time they can to shine, and as a result, means they all collectively get little to impart upon. In essence, I always prefer a show to baffle me with bullshit rather than a show that bores me to tears, and is thusly why I rate Season 1 of Hazbin Hotel higher than Wednesday Season 1 for that reason. And thus, Wednesday Season 2 ranks higher among Hazbin Hotel, chiefly of how much potential Hazbin Hotel Season 1 squanders. Speaking of, it is peculiar how the parallels between these two shows is noted, as though Wednesday Season 2 had to amp up the craziness to get more attention on it. And well, how that fare for it? It's interesting to note that a show that somehow got a Season 2 and even was approved for a Season 3, that this show still has very little in the way of a cultural touchstone across social media. Using Twitter as an example, here are several cursory glances at how much engagement Wednesday Season 2 truly derives, and the most engagement that I was able to scrape was of a teaser from a whole year ago with 2.5 million engagements. Keep in mind, engagements, not likes, retweets, or likewise. So imagine how many of those people got filtered to actually watching Season 2, much less all the way through. You'd think that Lady Gaga cameo and dance routine in episode 7 would have at the very least been something to drive interest in the show, but nope, it only drew more attention to Lady Gaga herself like that TikTok trend did for Season 1. It's like Netflix is the CW of streaming services with how much money it seems to piss away on projects that go nowhere and are awful in their own right, like with Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon or The Witcher. So what does that leave us with left? Well, the themes, of course, and the main one that I could wade through the nonsense was the need for attachment and belonging. This is most subtly expressed through Thing and his need to feel belong to the Addams family, as well as his own inner conflict with his past self. But with how much Agnes substitutes his position as Wednesday's loyal minion, removes much opportunity to explore him. The theme is more vocally expressed through Pugsley and his immediate desire to glom himself to Eugene, and that his need for friendship and belonging to the Addams went as far as reviving a zombie and proceeding to break bread for him. This also extends to Agnes wanting to attach herself to Wednesday to the point of trying to mimic her, Enid having her new wolf pack and not wanting to lose that after her realization that she's an alpha, and of the grudge Wednesday has to Morticia, coming into conflict with Morticia's grudge against Hester. Your mileage may vary as to whether this theme is better characterized between each, but is nevertheless persistent throughout. The only other theme that was only somewhat explored is secrecy and deception. This directly coincides with the attachment theme when it comes to Morticia and Wednesday, as either one of their closeting of information leads to shenanigans unfolding, and that therein lies a fine line between need to know and know nothing. There is some expressed in the Morning Song subplot, what with Bianca's forced chicanery through Dort, whom also had been pulling the strings of that subplot this whole time, putting Bianca consistently in positions of which unknowingly made her a victim of the same thing her mother went through, despite what Season 1 would have you believe that Gabrielle was completely of her own person confronting Bianca that way. And maybe you can twist my wrist about the Isaac Knight plotline being a secret from Tyler, even if the parties involved weren't around to tell him this whole time either. And that's about all that's left to say about Wednesday Season 2. Not much better, and burdened with extra baggage of having to account for the prior season with as little grace and semblance as it can. And at the end of the day, this show will be once more forgot until Season 3 nears its release, before it too becomes a non-entity that you could Mandela effect as being completely made up. And hey, perhaps Season 3 will actually have to kill Wednesday and revive her so that it can coincide with Jenna Ortega now looking like a living skull emoji as the only pull Season 3 has going for it. But regardless if no one sees it or everyone does, I'll be here to laugh at it and analyze it as always. That's it, folks. This was quite the undertaking of a project for me to get done in due time, somehow beating my previous record from this year of completing the Tales from the Borderlands project in a measly 4 months with nearly 7 hours of footage to analyze in just 2 months. So with that out of the way, what's next for me going forward? Well, Hazbin Hotel Season 2 also had its announced date of October 29 come around, and while I did have plans to cover that as well, I've been quite rattled trying to get this project out in time while juggling the odd architecture vids I've made in the interim. This year, thus far, I've done analysis vid after analysis vid with smaller vids to go along with it, so I think I'm going to rest on my laurels for the remainder of this year. Not that I won't watch Hazbin Hotel Season 2, even for how much the creator has soured on me, and do my own note-taking, but it'll be a project that I'll likely start into the next year, assuming that the next Borderlands analysis vid doesn't take priority over it. Of course, smaller videos are to come abound, as there are still a few more odd architecture vids regarding the Ravenholm maps to follow, along with the usual TF2 odd architecture vid after completing a chapter of Half-Life 2. As my usual bookend, citations will be provided in the pinned comment of the video as always, and if you've gotten this far and liked everything that I've made, consider throwing a few bucks my way through my Patreon as gratitude. There will also be some blooper reels I've saved from my recordings on Wednesday Season 2 as a final courtesy to the audience who suggested I do. I've hoped you enjoyed my long-winded ranting and raving, and at the very least got something illuminating from the experience, and hope to see you in future videos. Lastly, Ajax said in I guess Santiago didn't hand out wanted posters around. So his Gorgon gaze can work past him being a jar. In a jar. Fuck. I was trying to say it, I didn't put it in there. As for Gideon, while Bianca does reassure her of that, Ajax Berex? What the fuck am I doing? And we're going to see just how much of a butterfly effect Slurp having escaped his facility. His facility? It should be cell. Whoops. Siren sung into two of them. Fucked up. Wednesday and Fester decide this is the moment to get out, but Wednesday knows her. Wednesday decides for Weems' sake, if Dort plans to honor her legacy. I framed that like a question, so that she can conclude that Isaac is looking for her sister. His sister. Fuck, why do I always keep fucking messing up the pronouns here? Fucking pronouns! Lucky for him that Slurp was in... Wednesday and Fester arrive at the main store with Wednesday attempting to use the keycard she swiped to gain access. This fails, and Fester has to input this... So that begs the question of how a High can even stay alive before being given their own master, unless that was the reason his mother died. Oh, won't that somehow get relitigated? I'm gonna have to do that again. Jesus, that was really bad. Speaking of burnt out, Bianca mentions that since last semester, Wednesday chastises Dort, although somehow lumps Santiago into this, that he explicitly warned him she gain a one-up on her by speaking in fluent Spanish. Arlene perplexed by what Tyler brings up a sore topic to Wednesday as he invokes Enid's name and that he's going to kill her when he gets the chance on her putting her snout where it don't belong. Even though this is just to support